And we continue at 2:06 in the afternoon on the John Phillips Show. Mr. Randy Wings in Culver City.
So it's come to this, John. Katie Porter is at the stage in her gubernatorial campaign where she's making videos of her calling donors.
Hi, Kristen. It's Katie Porter. How are you?
Oh, there's that high-pitched voice again.
Hi, Kristen. It's Katie Porter. How are you?
Hi. How are you?
Good. I just wanted to call and say thank you so much for donating.
Whoa.
I think that's the Katie Porter nice voice.
Hey, hello, everybody. Oh, thank you.
It really means a lot.
Oh, here's another one.
Hi, Bertha. My name is...
Bertha?
That has to be real. You would never make that name up.
Hi, Bertha. My name is Katie Porter, and I'm running for California governor. How are you?
No, that's nice, Katie. That is, I'm not going to slam dunk a pot of boiling potatoes on your head, Katie.
That would be this Katie.
Oh, yes. Tread lightly when you get that, Katie.
There's a whole minute and a half of this video. Maybe we'll revisit it.
If you're on hold and want to weigh in on Ricardo Lara, the California Insurance Commissioner, stay there. We'll get to more calls later on in the hour. But right now, it is our pleasure to welcome our next guest to the program. He is a former member of the California State Legislature. He represented the Irvine area in the California State Assembly. He's now the Chief National Initiatives Officer at the Texas Public Policy Foundation. You can get online at texaspolicy.com and follow on X at Chuck Devore. Assemblyman Chuck Devore, welcome.
Hey, it's great to be with you, although I'm still recovering from that bit of PTSD that you gave me with that Katie Porter bit. My goodness.
Well, just wait till I lay this one on you. The last
I'm bracing myself.
The last time you were on, we talked about what a disaster the insurance market is here in the state of California. You had just written about that quite extensively, in fact, and compared it to what the insurance market is like in other states where it's functioning better than it is here in California. Well, now that we've been hit by these fires, we have an even bigger disaster than what we had going on before. The California Insurance Commissioner, Ricardo Lara, who is in his second and final term as insurance commissioner, in recent days has done the following. He gave State Farm the ability to jack up rates on homeowners statewide after an administrative hearing in Oakland where they made their case as to why they deserved a rate hike. He announced before the hearing started that he was going to give it to him anyway, but they had to do the hearing, and then he didn't attend the hearing, and then he gave it to State Farm because he said that's the way the judge cited. At the same time, homeowners who had their homes damaged or burned down entirely in the fires in Altadena, Pacific Palisades, Malibu, they say that the insurance companies aren't following the contracts that they have with them, and they're going to the California Department of Insurance to try to get them to lean on the insurance companies to abide by the contracts. They say they can't get a call returned, that he's not doing anything for homeowners who have lost everything in these fires. And they're not asking for anything special. They're just asking for the contracts to be enforced. Ricardo Lara then goes in front of a live audience in Sacramento and says he understands that everyone hates him and he doesn't care. Let's listen.
And you know what? This may be the hardest work that I do as an elected official, as an insurance commissioner, and I may be criticized and dragged through the mud for it and get my wig snatched, as the gay guys say, and dragged through every corner of this state, and I might end up being the most unelectable person, but I don't care because this is going to be the most meaningful work that I do for the state of California.
That is quite a hot take.
Well, I mean, I'm trying to catch my breath here. So what's happening in California, let's look at the big picture first, right? The progressives that run the state, even as Gavin Newsom appears to be running from progressivism, or at least trying to engage in revisionism as to what he's actually done and believed in over the last several years. They don't like people living in what they see as these opulent areas along the wildland-urban interface, whether it's in the foothills over Los Angeles or in the far northern reaches of California adjacent to U.S. Forest Service land. They want people living in small, compact, energy-efficient flats in high-rise apartments, good high density, no cars, public transportation, of course, operated by union members. And so I'm rather surprised that Laura even approved the rate hike with State Farm, because I think ultimately what they want to see happen in California is that most of the private insurers exit the market, and then the government becomes the insurer of essentially first resort, and then the government is going to essentially crack down and tell you where you can and can't get fire insurance. Because if you can't get it, you can't get a loan to build a house or to buy a house, right? So they can then determine where you live and how you live. So, and of course the insurance commissioner job has always been a great job for, raising money, because it's one of those things where, you're dealing with the profits of a big industry. And so they are highly incentivized to get your attention with some donations.
Well, what I think was most surprising to me is the complete indifference to public opinion. And I say that because when you're in politics, you do have to make unpopular decisions at times. If there is less money coming in than you thought there would be, there are budget cuts that have to be made, and people will lose services. Some people might be laid off. You're going to take some heat if you go ahead and vote for budget cuts. But sometimes that has to be done because you have to live within your means. But what he's doing here is not that. What he's doing here is different from that. He is basically thumbing his nose at the ratepayers and the voters here in California. He's not saying this is a tough decision, I had to do it, here are the reasons why. If you understand the arguments, I think you'll agree with me. You may not like it, but I think you'll at least see my side of the story. That's not what he's saying. He's saying, I'm doing it, you hate it, I'm aware of that, and I could care less.
Yeah, well, I mean, again, voters have a very short memory span. State Farm's market share in California is a little bit under 20%, so it's about 1 in 5 people who own homes, right? Because if you're a renter, as are, I think, the last I checked, the majority of Californians, you're not even going to notice this. And so, who's going to hold them accountable? The next campaign, I suppose, they could try to dredge this up. But again, the share of people who have lost their homes in the terrible fires in the Palisades is a vanishingly small percentage of the total California electorate. So I think what's happened is he's let the mask come off, and he's not exactly saying or doing what he's supposed to do or say as a professional politician. We're actually seeing how he really feels about it, though, and it's rather shocking when you see it, isn't it?
It is. Let's go ahead and shift gears here and talk about some national politics, because there are books that are now available on the market written by Jake Tapper, one of them at least, and other reporters.
I know where you're going with this. Oh, my.
Who have been covering politics, national politics, for quite some time. And he has a book out that is essentially making the argument that Joe Biden is demented, that the people around him were well aware of him being demented. The Democrats in the legislature were aware of him being demented, but everyone else was in the dark about it. No one knew because it was not reported in the mainstream media that Joe Biden was demented. And the proof that he has to show that Joe Biden is demented is that Joe Biden didn't recognize George Clooney at a fundraiser that George Clooney was hosting for Joe Biden. And I'm looking at this saying, okay, well, that seems entirely within the character of the Joe Biden I know. But how is it that Jake Tapper and others in the mainstream media, and I guess people who voted for Joe Biden, didn't know that there were problems with Joe Biden's cognitive skills when, he had a conversation with a dead congresswoman in public? Was that not enough?
I mean, this is so painfully obvious. I was on, I think it was Fox Business in 2022, as I recall, where I just came out and said that it's very obvious that we have a president in cognitive decline. Now, some of that is due to the fact that my wife and I took care of her parents, who were both suffering from dementia. We lost my father-in-law about 18 months ago, just shy of 99 years old. And when you are with someone 24/7, 365, who lives in your house, who's declining into dementia, and then you see the President of the United States exhibit a lot of the same symptoms right there in front of you, in front of the cameras, and then when you call it out, the other side, including the media, are you a doctor? Are you a psychologist? That's a lie. What they call the fake videos? What was the term from the White House press secretary? Deep fake videos. It's like, really? Okay. Look, we have the 25th Amendment for a reason. It was put in the Constitution because of what happened during Woodrow Wilson's time. He had strokes while he was in office. His wife ran the government for a while. They hid everything back in the day when you could do that even better than today, without all the TV cameras and the social media and all that stuff. And they didn't invoke it because they lusted after power, and not only power to try to get another Democrat elected after Biden left office, but also power in the moment, because they were cutting deals and they were putting pork in different bills and they were chopping contracts off to their friends and recycling all those billions of dollars of money from the NGOs back into American politics. They were too busy trying to game the system and maintain power to admit the truth. And so to have someone who's supposed to be the vanguard for the American people to tell us at least some version of the truth, come out after the fact and say, well, these people lied to me. Excuse me, Mr. Tapper, you were a willing distributor of the propaganda from the Biden regime. Sit down and shut up, sir.
You know what's interesting? A couple weeks ago, I had Willie Brown, the former Speaker of the California Assembly, on the program.
Oh, yeah.
And the conversation led to what life was like pre-term limits in the legislature in California. And I said, listen, you had to have people who were senile in your caucus at that moment in time, because name ID is very important when a politician puts their name on the ballot. And people like Ralph Dills, who were in the legislature from literally the New Deal until the 1990s, would get reelected time and time again. And there are reports out from people who knew him, related to him, worked for him, who essentially said that Ralph Dills was out of it for the last 20 years he was in the legislature. And there were other people like him in the legislature in a similar state. And I said, how is it that you would manage a member if you knew they weren't all there mentally? If you knew that they were senile or demented or had problems cognitively, how would you handle that as the man who was in charge of that chamber? And his answer was interesting, especially in the context of Biden. He said, I made sure to let them know that I would take care of whatever it was that they needed. I would check in with them constantly. And I don't want to paraphrase here, but I would own their vote. Right. Which makes sense. I understand that. If you're dealing with a president who is in cognitive decline, who is either demented or senile or fill in the blank, and you apply the Willie Brown logic to Joe Biden, well, someone owned his vote. The people around him were the ones that had the power. The people around him were the ones that were calling the shots. And we still don't know who those people exactly are.
No, we don't. Well, and here's the bigger issue for me, and I called it out several months before Biden left office, that it was a massive national security issue. So here's the big difference between Article 1 legislatures and Article 2 executive branches. When I was in the legislature, I was 1/80th of 1/3 of 1/3 of the California government, right? We have two houses. I was in the assembly. There was 80 members, right? So there's a whole 120 lawmakers in the California legislature. If you have a few that are, a couple of bricks short of a load, you can function because we're a deliberative body, right? And you have large numbers of votes, and then you have a governor who can sign or veto legislation, and we're not in charge of anything except our own staff, right? So the damage that you can have from any one lawmaker is very limited. If you're a governor, though, or if you're a president, you are the chief executive. You are the sole leader of an entire 1/3 of the power of the way we run our government here in America. And it gets even worse because if you're the president, you're the commander in chief. And if you look at the Federalist Papers, they were talking about how the whole essence of the executive is energy. Look at the difference in the energy levels that we see in the first, 120 days of President Trump versus the entire 4-year period of Joe Biden, with him falling on the baby stairs at on Air Force One, falling over on his bike. It's like it's night and day. And the thing is that person was making decisions about life and death, about war and peace, about the nuclear, the use of nuclear weapons. Are you kidding me? You can't do that through a committee, through some regency like we used to have in ancient Europe. If the king died unexpectedly and his son or daughter was like 3 or 4 years old, they'd have a regency council, right, until the young person was old enough to rule. That's what we had in America. We had a regency council. We didn't have a president.
Well, and I think a lot of the assumptions are that, well, it was Ron Klain or it was his chief of staff. It was someone who is close to him in the government. But you don't know that. It could have been his wife. It could have been Hunter Biden as the one calling the shots, for all we know.
Well, whoever it was, we didn't vote for them. I mean, that's the point, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, it would be an unelected person who is calling the shots, and their identity is still being withheld from us. It's a hell of a story, but now the news media, including Jake Tapper, they're trying to pat themselves on the back.
Yeah,
it's nuts.
I mean, it's so nauseating. It's like, excuse me, you were part of the cover-up, Mr. Tapper, and all of your colleagues in the media, and any of us who dared call it as it was were shouted down for somehow being right-wing conspiracy theorists when all we were reporting on was what we could see with our own 2 eyes.
Chuck Devore, former member of the California Assembly, now the Chief National Initiatives Officer at the Texas Public Policy Foundation. You can get him online at texaspolicy.com. Follow him on X at Chuck Devore. And whenever the former Assemblyman writes something, it's always a great read. Check it out. Chuck Devore, Assemblyman Devore, thank you so much for stopping by.
Thank you.
If you'd like to email the show, you can do so at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. That's johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. And Randy, if you want to listen to us after we sign off at 3, that's easy to do.
All you got to do is search for The John Phillips Show wherever you get your podcasts, whether that's the Apple Podcast app, iHeart, Spotify. Search for The John Phillips Show. Hit subscribe. You could download all the episodes. Apparently, the show is so good, it'll get your wig snatched.
And I may be criticized and dragged through the mud for it and get my wig snatched, as the gay guys say.
If you're on hold, stay there. We'll get to more calls coming up in moments. If you'd like to join us and weigh in on Ricardo Lara saying he knows he's unpopular and doesn't care, give us a call at 800-222-5222. California's insurance commissioner, Ricardo Lara, just gave State Farm permission to jack up rates on homeowners statewide. He also is being accused by fire victims of not enforcing contracts that homeowners have with insurance companies whose homes burned down in the fire or were damaged by the fire, and claim that the insurance companies aren't paying up. They aren't holding up their end of the bargain. The homeowners say they go to Ricardo Lara and the California Department of Insurance, and they get no help. Their complaints fall on deaf ears. The insurance commissioner went before a live audience here in California and said he's aware that everyone hates him, and Jimmy Crack Corn, I don't care.
And you know what? This may be the hardest work that I do as an elected official, as an insurance commissioner, and I may be criticized and dragged through the mud for it and get my wig snatched, as the gay guys say, and dragged through every corner of this state. And I might end up being the most unelectable person, but I don't care, because this is going to be the most meaningful work that I do for the state of California.
Right now, it's your opportunity to weigh in at 800-222-5222. Let's begin with Robert in San Pedro. Robert, welcome.
Hey, how you guys doing today?
Good.
Rick, gentlemen, Ricardo Laura, little Ricky, he is going to take the money and run. I mentioned this before. He's going to get a DEI operation, and he's going to take off to a country with no extradition. I guarantee it. Guys, have a great day.
Well, thank you so much for the call. Well, Randy, we know he has a passport.
How's Colombia these days?
Let's go to Yolanda in Santa Cruz. Yolanda, hello.
Hello, John. It is Yolanda here, and thank you for taking my call. I've been a homeowner for a while, and I see things happening, but I do believe he told on himself about the gay guys, because I do believe he's being somewhere down the line. From who, I don't know exactly. But my theory is it's a company called CIM, Real Estate, Smart Building Platform. I believe that, you know, it's a domino effect. People aren't able to afford the insurance. In some areas, are not even given the opportunity to have insurance because of the insurance companies. Oh, we're not taking anybody in California. We're not taking anybody in California. We've been through that. Thank God I found an insurance company. But anybody that has a mortgage is mandated to have insurance. So I believe that he's going to be by this company because people that are losing their homes, this company, CIM, buys up all these properties. They build these units with 1,000, 2,000 units on these properties. And where is Newsom? Is he going to, enforce this 3 cents on a mile when you drive your car? These homes are so that people can't have any place to park a car. They're not allowed to be independent. They have to use public transportation. Where I live, public transportation is growing, but it's still really weak. And my theory is that he is being by a building company, and he's going to have income because.
Yolanda, can I beg you to stop using that term?
Are you on?
Okay. Thank you so much for the call. I'm just out of dump.
Well, usually when a caller comes on, if they're going to work blue, you can see it coming from a mile away. I honestly didn't see that one coming.
We do have certain standards, as antiquated as they may be, that we do have to adhere to.
All right, let's go.
God love her spirit.
No, I understand what she was trying to do there, and it was an admirable effort. Let's go to Bill in La Cañada. Bill, hello.
Hey, John. Yeah, Laura's phony response reminds me of another self-righteous Democrat on the hot seat about 30 years ago. Remember this? I'll probably be dragged through the mud and have my wig snatched, as the gay guys say, but I assure you that my staff is working hard.
You're right on the line, Bill.
Thank you for the call.
All right. Try to pick whoever you think is going to be the cleanest person as we build back up the delay.
All right. Mitchell and Ashland. Mitchell, if you were to swear as a child, would your mother put soap in your mouth?
No.
Okay, go back on hold. Let's go to Eric in Sonoma. Eric, if you were to swear as a child, would your mother put a bar of soap in your mouth?
Absolutely. She made me scrape it with my front teeth.
All right, we'll try you.
What do you want to say, Eric?
So that Katie Porter bit, Randy, should have come with the disclaimer that basically said, turn your volume down on your AirPods, because I damn near made my ear bleed when she screamed in my AirPod. I want to say that Attorney General Pam Bondi, I emailed you, John, yesterday about this. There needs to be some kind of accountability for the state officials in California. who are grifting off of the taxpayer, who are stealing money from us, that are committing crimes. This quid pro quo that Ricardo Lara, kind of sketch Lara, has with State Farm needs to be investigated. And I would just urge Pam Bondi or somebody in government at the federal level to look into this guy, because the level of arrogance to stand on his soapbox and say that he doesn't care, and if you lost your home, deal with it, the deal's done, is just infuriating, and it pisses me off. And I just, for the life of me, don't understand why there isn't any kind of investigations into these politicians, into these grifters here in California.
Well, Pam Bondi should be looking into it because we are the largest state in the union. I know we do have new U.S. attorneys that were appointed here in California that include Bill Asaley with the Central District, and he's looking into all the homeless funding that is being stolen from taxpayers here in the Golden State. But this should be right up there with the rest of them, because it's going to be impossible for people to buy homes in California if they're uninsurable. And right now, that market is going to hell, and going to hell fast. And if we have an insurance commissioner who's refusing to do his job and is doing things that are, let's just say, unethical, then I think that there should be extra scrutiny on that. Because if there's something that goes beyond being just unethical, then the government needs to blow the whistle on that, because we're all suffering from it. Thank you so much for the call.
Okay, you can take whoever you want now. The dump is built back up.
Okay, let's go back to Mitchell and Ashland. Mitchell, hello.
Hello.
Hi there.
Love your show. Great
Thank
show.
you.
I just want to say about Laura, and I guess that's the correct name now. This guy is probably going to have a job with State Farm as a CEO, making $1 million a year, and not doing anything. That's my opinion.
Okay, but here's the response to that. After he terms out, he can't do anything for him. He's got nothing to sell. They, at that point, have gotten all the juice out of the squeeze. You don't need to do anything for him. You may have a handshake deal, but if you go back on your deal, there's no way he can enforce it.
No, exactly, John. But the fact of the matter is that he made the deal already, and they're just going to give him a sweetheart deal. He's going to work for the company that they already have.
Yeah, you see, I just don't understand. I understand promising that to him, but following through with it makes no sense, because the guy is attracting a ton of negative attention. If he then goes and works for State Farm, let's say, after he terms out of office, if the feds aren't looking into him right now, they certainly will be after he goes to work for State Farm, after he gave them all of these sweetheart deals while he was serving as insurance commissioner. If you're State Farm, hiring Ricardo Lara almost guarantees the feds are going to be knocking on your door too.
Well, I'm sure there's a way to get around that.
I don't know. Maybe if there was a Democratic administration, because Ricardo Lara is a Democrat, he's a partisan, and certainly the Democratic Party would not benefit at all from going after him and exposing corruption. But with the Trump administration in charge of the Department of Justice, they're not going to do him any political favors. That's for sure.
No, absolutely, John. But in the same token, he already works for the Democratic Party. So he may not work. It could be, progressive or something like that. He'd be underneath. He's just going to he's already done his work of ripping us off and having himself, taken care of for the rest of his life. That's why he doesn't care. He doesn't care about us as Californians. He never has and never will. But he's also doing the fact that for his own personal benefit of saying, hey, I got it. Who cares about you? And so he's going to run and go.
All right. Thank you for the call, sir. Let's go to Ben in Beverly Hills. Ben, hello.
Hey, I just keep getting what appears to be bribes while in office and after office. Mr. Former Mayor Tony Villar Villaraigosa was broke. He couldn't even pay for his grifted event tickets. Then the next thing I hear, he's living on the top of the hill in the Hollywood Hills with a 360 view. So how do you go from broke to owning what looks like $100 million home, and now he's running for governor again. He promised to end poverty, but he didn't bend a finger to help us. We've got Mayor Pete, who is at home while our commerce is stacking up during the Biden administration, and he's trying to breastfeed his child, and they're laughing at us. These people who are literally destroying our infrastructure. No jail time, no apparent follow-up to see how they've bribed. We need to legislate against these conflicts of interest. Laura is not only a criminal, but a traitor. If you look at what he's doing, he's destroying the state with the biggest economy, and Governor Newsom is silent. I think that is disqualifying for both, and I think that all of these creeps need to be looked at as criminals. And you've got Kamala Harris. Her only job in the administration is to take care of the border, and she refuses to do it. She refuses to talk about it, and she's talking about running for governor. Are you joking?
All right. Thank you for the call, sir. We appreciate it. 800-222-5222 is the telephone number. 1-800-222-5222. California's insurance commissioner, Ricardo Lara, says he's aware that you hate him, and he doesn't give a flip.
And you know what? This may be the hardest work that I do as an elected official, as an insurance commissioner, and I may be criticized and dragged through the mud for it and get my wig snatched, as the gay guys say, and dragged through every corner of this state. And I might end up being the most unelectable person, but I don't care, because this is going to be the most meaningful work that I do for the state of California.
800-222-5222 is the telephone number. Let's begin with James in Oakland. James, welcome.
Yeah, how you doing? I listen to your show all the time, and I love you, John and Randy. You guys do a hell of a job. Now, I wanted to say I used to be a prominent Democrat, and I'm not one to mince words. This is Laura, Ricardo, whatever the hell his name is. We Democrats, if we're going to be taken seriously by these chumps, the Republicans, and we're acting like chumps, we ought to get, because this is war right now. We got to get these punks out of our party and make it to which we are reasonable. We're coming off now like a bunch of stool pigeons in a sea of turds.
Thank you for the call. He has a way with words. Let's go to Donna in San Leandro. Donna, welcome.
Hello, thank you. I love your show. And just wanted to say that Commissioner Laura, while I can't stand the man, he is also over a barrel. It's the insurance commission for the last 30 years has been saying, insurance companies, you can't raise your rates without our approval, and it can't be 6%. It has to be 6% or less. And then they take an average of 2 years to approve the 5.9% rate increase. So with all of the disasters we've had, not only in California, but worldwide, the insurance companies are saying, hey, we're out of here. You won't let us have a rate increase. You won't let us have use catastrophic modeling for our rates, and we can't do business that way. They're also the ones that are funding the FAIR plan. So he has to give them a big rate increase. But the whole insurance commission is just a disaster.
There's no doubt that rate increases are on the way here in California and in other states in the union. But if you're the insurance commissioner and you're the one that gets to decide whether or not it gets approved, at a minimum, part of the deal should be they have to enforce the contracts. If you have a contract with someone whose home was damaged and the policy says you have to pay X, well, we're not going to let you get away with paying Y. You have to pay X. And according to these homeowners in Altadena and Pacific Palisades and Malibu, that's not happening, and the Department of Insurance is not leaning on these companies to fulfill their obligation.
Well, a larger part was the insurance companies came in and canceled a lot of the policies that they had in those areas. And then they had the big fire. And now people are saying, no, we were with you for 20 years. You can't cancel us right before, we have a catastrophe.
Well, those people are now on the FAIR plan, and they're dealing with other problems. But there are current customers of State Farm and other companies who are saying that the insurance carrier that they currently had at the time of the fires is not fulfilling their obligations, and they go to the insurance commissioner, and he won't take their calls. All right, that's it for us today. We'll be back tomorrow at noon for another edition of The John Phillips Show.